It's almost like a training camp, and Ramadan is your big match. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Scattered Thoughts. Yes, it's back. It's back again with Scattered Thoughts. I think the biggest lesson that we can all learn from this is that persistence is crucial. Persistence is crucial to achieving something, to succeeding in something. And I think I don't go a week without having somebody, either through Facebook or through Twitter, or sometimes I get direct questions sent to me on andalusonline.org. You could go to the contact page there and just send me a question directly. And I don't think I pass a week without someone asking for Scattered Thoughts to come back again. And the last video was, I think it's been at least 2 years since the last Scattered Thoughts video. It's been a while. And I've been meaning to get it going. I wanted to get going, but it's just busy. And plus, it's not like I'm doing nothing. Those of you who follow me on iTunes, podcast, Stitcher, podcast app, whichever podcast that you use, app that you use, you know that I put out, I've continued to put out podcasts for the past 2 years. There's quite a bit of material there. You also know that if you're following my work, Andalus Book Club on andalusonline.org, that's an online book club that I've been running for the last two plus years, and now we're into our third year with a third book list. And every month I have a live webinar that can go on for longer than 2 hours at a time, where we go through the book that we're reading that month, and I extract the main themes, ideas, lessons to be drawn from it, look at it through the light of the Quran and the Sunnah, and relevance, basically the practical relevance to Muslims' daily life. On top of also doing interviews with other podcasts, with Noor Night, for example, or like in the Days of Noor, that's the latest one that I did. There was Coffee with Kareem, there's the Mad Mamluks, and I've appeared on a number of other podcasts. All that also takes time. So Scattered Thoughts, unfortunately, had to take a backseat. And I've been conflicted. I've been wanting to do this again. And I gotta tell you, if you get your brain used to long form, delving deeply into something, and talking more in the abstract theoretical realm about stuff, doing this type of video, this type of recording is a bit odd, because I got 5 to 10 minutes max. I'm trying to keep it in that 5-minute range. Give you a quick idea, quick something to do. It's more practical. It's more about triggering you to think about these subjects rather than delving deeper into them. But let's see what happens. Let's see what happens as we get this going. All right, enough of that. During Andalus Book Club office hours this past weekend, and by this past weekend I mean, as I'm recording this, is Sunday in Brisbane, so the weekend is already leaving us. One of the members asked about Ramadan, and the question was, how do we get ready for this month? What should we do? Any counsel about that? At the time of recording this, we're about 58, 57 days out from Ramadan. We're in the 3rd, 4th of Rajab right now. And it's a good question, because there's a recognition when you ask that when you start Ramadan, you don't want to start cold turkey. You don't want to create a shock to your system on day 1 of Ramadan. Thing is, it takes, you've heard of the statement, 3 weeks and it's a habit. If you go and travel, jet lag, it takes you 3 weeks to adjust for your body, your hormonal regulation, to get back into a sync with whatever time zone that you happen to travel to. And so you experience jet lag and your body isn't really there for the first couple of weeks. The same thing happens in Ramadan. Ramadan is like a spiritual jet lag time for a lot of people, because you're going throughout all of your year doing a particular activity. You're engaged in a particular routine. And then the last couple of days of Sha'ban, you're now anticipating, and you're waiting for, did they see this, did they sight the new crescent or not? And when they do, all of a sudden you're switching your schedule from getting up at a particular time of the day in the morning to pray subh, to now getting up probably an hour earlier. And that's a significant amount of time. Maybe even an hour and a half earlier. You're now going to disrupt your sleep pattern. Your eating and your coffee drinking behavior, that's also getting disrupted, because your breakfast is now going to be had earlier. You're going to have it at suhoor time. So your circadian rhythm for your sleep, for your hormonal release, for your insulin as well, how your insulin, what time your insulin is getting triggered to be released, your liver function, all of these things that are going to be triggered now, all of that is happening at an earlier time. And then you go on throughout your whole day. I mean, if you're living in the West, nobody really cares that it's Ramadan. You're still going to work. You're still having to engage in all of your regular daily activities to some degree, unless you're self-employed or someone who's just, rich enough to be able to take that time off, or fortunate enough to ask for a holiday during that month. But for most of us, you still have to go to your school, you still got to do your work, you still got to engage with all of the obligations that you have to do. And so you're physiologically shocking your body in a way that it's just not used to it. And so you get groggy. You're mentally not as present. You're cognitively not as sharp. So what do? The counsel I gave, and I'm extending it to you guys here, is you have to start earlier with Ramadan. It's almost like a training camp, and Ramadan is your big match. I've heard some refer to Ramadan as a school, and after Ramadan that you've been trained. No. Ramadan is your match. Those of you who are in MMA or boxing or martial arts or whatever it is that you're into, or if you have final exams, you don't start studying for the final exams the day of the final exam. Let's say you have a final exam period that goes for a week. Well, I could tell you at our university, we have a week ahead of final exams where they give you that week off. And the idea behind it is no more hospital work, no more tutorials, no more engagement with any school activities. Now it's time for you to sit down, buckle down, and study. But they even tell us if that's the only time you're going to study, you might fail. You're not going to get through because the material is too much and you need to be maintaining some sort of routine of studying throughout the whole year. The same thing goes for Ramadan. I mean, there's in the tradition, we have some of the scholars mentioning that the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, were preparing for Ramadan 6 months in advance. So now we're talking 2 months. This is your training camp, 8-week training camp. What do you have to do in this training camp? I could tell you what I'm doing. I like to have my coffee in the morning with my breakfast. So I started moving my coffee earlier. So now I get my coffee ready before subh time as opposed to subh time, after subh time. It moved it up by about half an hour, but it's enough time that it can facilitate a slow change that is not too shocking to my system. But then when I start having my coffee an hour ahead of time, now I'm good to go. My brain is not going to be too shocked. Also, my breakfast and if I take any supplements, vitamins, things like that, I'm moving all of these things a little bit earlier because I want to change my circadian rhythm. I want to change my hormonal regulation to get used to all of this stuff is going to come earlier now. Even my sleeping schedule, instead of getting up at time X, I'm now getting up at time X minus 30 minutes. So if you get up at 5, I'd recommend start off with 15 minutes. Get up at 4:45 instead of 5. And do that for a couple of weeks. Do that for a week. And then a week later, as you adjust, get up at 4:30. And start making these adjustments in your eating habits as you get closer to Ramadan and your waking habits, so that by the time Ramadan starts, you don't have to make a lot of changes. You're not going to experience that jet lag. With regards to eating, every once in a while, start to skip a meal. I'm not someone who fasts. I'm not a fasting type of person who goes, mashallah, some people are able to do the Mondays and Thursdays and the 3 middle days of the month and do all these sunan. My body doesn't, I just don't do that. That's not my thing. But come Rajab, Sha'ban, now you got to start amping it up. I can't all of a sudden start on Ramadan fasting when I'm not used to fasting. So what do? You start incorporating Mondays and Thursdays now. You're not somebody who does Mondays and Thursdays or any of these things. Start doing Mondays and Thursdays during Rajab. Incorporate the 3 middle days of the month so that you're now getting your body used to the idea of there's going to be some days where I'm not going to be having food at the times that I'm used to. And when I say fasting, I mean proper fasting, like no water, no drinks, no food, all of that stuff. Start skipping meals. Start skipping lunch. The days that you're not fasting, pick a day where you say, you know what? I don't need to have lunch today. And I'm just going to go and work through. Basically, get your body adapting and getting used to scarcity. Getting used to a little bit of exhaustion. Not too much that you're going to suffer in your work and in your mental abilities and stuff, but just enough to just tease it a bit. Your workout schedule. I like to go to the gym, so what do? Instead of working out in the morning like I usually do, after subh, I now move my workouts to the evening. So I work out after I get back from the hospital as opposed to before. And the way that I started doing that, by the way, is I started to pick days where if I can work out in the afternoon, then I'll do it in the afternoon. And I did that for a while. And now I'm slowly going to transition that into evening workouts. Why? Because I can't go all of a sudden from morning workouts to evening workouts without any kind of transition, without a slow gradual change. I've done that before. It sucks. It's terrible. So you do these adjustments. I'm telling you what I'm doing for myself to give you an idea and trigger your mind to think about what can you do for your own self. Do the necessary adjustments and do them slowly, incrementally, as you get through. Come Sha'ban, I pretty much fast most of Sha'ban. Because when Ramadan comes, as soon as it comes about, and FYI, and I mentioned this in an intensive that I did, and the recording for it is available on my channel here, The Inner Dimensions of Fasting. Somebody asked about, oh, but the Prophet ﷺ said don't fast the last 2 weeks of Sha'ban, and the scholars actually mentioned that when it comes to hadiths like this, you cannot use them if you're not somebody who doesn't fast. You can't all of a sudden become Mr. Pious following the Sunnah when you don't follow the Sunnah all year long. So the last day of Sha'ban, sure, don't fast that. But the rest of Sha'ban, go ahead, fast, because you need to get your body adapted and adjusted to when Ramadan starts. There's really nothing different now. What happens in Ramadan? Ramadan is a time where you amp everything up. So you start to pray at night, you start to recite your Quran. Oh, that's actually the most important part. If you're not somebody who recites the Quran on a daily basis, just regularly, that's something that you should change now and forever. You should be having a daily portion of the Quran to recite. Let's say that you normally recite a hizb, half a juz, 10 pages. Do that, but add to it maybe another 10 pages. Do a juz every day. Try to do a khatam of the Quran during Rajab and try to do another khatam during Sha'ban. So when Ramadan comes, do 2 instead of 1, or maybe 3 instead of 1. So that's how you ramp up these things. And then when Ramadan comes, pick an activity. And I don't care what it is. It could be a ritual action of prayer or adhkar or hizb, or it could be a charitable thing. It could be you volunteering, whatever. Something that you know that you can sustain. It's small enough and simple enough that you can incorporate into your routine, and you can be sure of yourself and certain that despite it being kind of a new thing, that I'm able to continue this afterwards. Because you cannot enter Ramadan with your regular routine that you've had all year and exit from it to go back to the same routine that you've had. So after Ramadan finishes, your routine pre-Ramadan should be a little bit different now. You should incorporate something into it. That's how you elevate and improve every Ramadan. After every Ramadan, you increase something. You've done, now you're adding something that you didn't do before. أحب الأعمال إلى الله أدومها وإن قل. Al-Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that the most beloved of all actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those which we are most consistent with, even if it's little. So in Ramadan, pick something and just say, all right, I normally don't do this extra sunnah, or I normally don't do this extra recitation, or I normally don't do this extra ahzab, I normally don't volunteer for a food drive on the weekend, whatever it is. Just pick something that you know you can sustain and maintain, and do that for the rest of your life. The Sahaba never picked anything up except that they decided, they made a covenant with themselves that they will continue it for the rest of their existence on this planet. Same thing should be with us. So that's it. I hope this was beneficial in some way. Scattered Thoughts is back on again. Can't promise how regular it will be, but inshallah we'll keep this going as long as I can. Andalus Book Club, if you're interested in joining that, links are all in the description. There's office hours that I do on a weekly basis. There's a live webinar that I do every month. The whole website is actually getting revamped and changed up, and I got professionals to do that. So watch out for that over the next month, inshallah. Lots of changes happening to that website. But Scattered Thoughts, inshallah, we'll get this going. If you have questions, if you have things you would like me to comment on, that you think I'm qualified to comment on in some way, that you would like to hear my thoughts about, you can leave your comments in the description. I'll read those, or you can send me a message. You can do that through Facebook. You could do that through andalusonline.org, or you can just holler at me through Twitter. Anyways, hope this was good. welcome back to myself, as I said to myself, and welcome back to you. Assalamu alaikum.